And even if you don't buy the U.S. should be leader of the free world, obviously I think we all do, but even if you don't buy that, then you go to the argument of, you do realize that every dime we spent given to Ukraine that depletes Russian military capability increases our relative strength to our most dangerous adversary, right? So even if you take out the morals, the ethics, the fact that we're a democracy and we've always viewed ourselves as leader of the free world, every dime enhances our own national security. And then even if you don't buy that, there's $335 billion worth of frozen Russian assets that they could use to support Ukraine. It wouldn't even be our own money, right? This is one of those times you're going to have to decide what side you're on. It's pretty clear. And you don't get, you don't get peace by capitulation. You're just going to get more conflict.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Eyes on Geopolitics. I'm joined today with Mick Mulroy, Jason Lyons, maybe Andy Milburn in a little bit. I think he's just finishing up his bicep workout. A lot happening as usual. The big stuff that's cooking right now, that's taking like precedence in the news anyway, is the 28-point peace plan for Ukraine and Russia that was supposedly drawn up by the U.S., but we don't really know. There's a bit of back and forth with that. I read through the 28, the whole thing, and it's it's kind of a joke. And here's Andy. Andy's not even there. That's okay. We keep going. I'll mute him. All right, Andy. Andy, we're recording, so get your mind right.
Hey, never mind that. Did I miss the announcement?
What was the announcement?
Jason's getting married?
Yeah, I did.
I see Mick's already
yes.
has already dressed up. Yeah, that's a big occasion.
That's right. I got dressed up for the occasion. I did.
Yeah.
I put on a big t-shirt.
He did it well. He did it well.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's great news.
Congratulations, Jay.
Thank
Fantastic.
You. Appreciate it.
That's awesome. Congrats, Jay. All right, let's start over. I'll leave that in, actually. All right, so we're talking 28-point peace plan that was supposedly written by Witkoff. Secretary Rubio, maybe. There's like so many conflicting reports going on that we don't even know. There is a report saying that it's basically translated from Russian, and it was a Russian report that was handed to Witkoff. It's chaos. If you read through the 28 points, it's like kind of like, there's some good stuff in there, but it's mostly bullshit. Like, let's be honest. So I'm going to pass this over to the experts. Tell me what you guys are thinking in terms of what this peace plan means. Also, they gave Ukraine a deadline of Thanksgiving, which is kind of fucking hilarious. The state of here's the future of your country, and you have 5-7 days to decide. So let us know as soon as possible. Which I'm editorializing now, guys. Sorry, alert. Like, you should maybe play hardball with fucking Russia. The actual aggressor of this war. Over to you guys. Mick, you go ahead.
So we've been talking about this all week as a U.S. plan on the news, as people know. And now we're hearing that it could have potentially been a Russian drafted plan that was then leaked to the press. And quite frankly, if you read the 28 points, it looks like a Russian drafted plan. So I don't know, but there's certainly several media reports from very valid sources that Secretary Rubio essentially said that the U.S. did not draft it and implied that Russia did. So to start with that, don't know if it's true, but that's very consistent with the way Russia does negotiations. It's very much their version of psychological warfare, what they call decision shaping or reflexive control. For those of you who follow the Russian means of statecraft, which is always intertwined with intelligence operations. So it's possible that Russia drafted the plan to look like it came from the United States, gave it to a delegate of the United States, let it circulate, and then leaked it to the press to basically cause a lot of consternation with European partners and obviously with Ukraine. That I don't know that that's what happened, but that is what happened as far as like the consternation part of it. So, and there was a lot of pushback, not only from all our European partners, but Republicans in Congress, including the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and that was the part about Secretary Rubio briefing those senators who are very much not in alignment with what it's asking Ukraine to do. So some of the points, and then obviously turn it over to the other fellows here. If you concede completely your territory, not just acknowledge that you can't take it back militarily, that is obviously rewarding aggression. And it can't be done just by the leadership of Ukraine. It has to include a referendum. That would be entirely against their interest. It then requires that Ukraine cuts its military in half, that it can never join NATO, that European forces who have already volunteered can't go in to secure, that the war does not restart. And then it gives a tenuous security guarantee, which doesn't appear to be, essentially a treaty, what they would need to guarantee it. And it's important to point out that Ukraine currently has an agreement by the United States and the UK to protect it from an invasion. And you can see how that's going. So and then, there's even some versions that say the Ukraine would have to pay for the security guarantee, actually compensate the United States for it. So I'm now hoping that this was a Russian plan that just gets ripped up and thrown in the trash can, and that they start over with one that's far more aligned with Ukraine, which is our partner, not Russia, and that the Europeans really step up, because there's a lot going on. I'm sure Andy can get into it, Jay can get into it on the battlefield right now, and it's not really going great. So we need to step up our support, tear up this agreement, start over, step up our support militarily and sanctions and the release of frozen funds, or we're going to see a potential loss long term. It's going to take a while in Europe of a key democratic ally.
Milburn?
Yeah, I don't know whether to laugh or panic at this plan. It's just extraordinary. For instance, it prohibits Ukraine from launching a missile at Moscow or St. Petersburg, but nowhere else in Russia. And there's no limit on Russian strikes at all. Russia basically is rewarded for halting its invasion by keeping all the territory it already has, plus some more. It gets welcomed into the international community, including the G8. It gets relief from sanctions. What does Ukraine get? It gets a ceasefire, which is likely to be temporary, and an American guarantee that Russia will not attack again. I think Mick already summed up very nicely what that guarantee means. This really does favor Putin, because aside from limiting Ukrainians' military, cutting it in half, and by the way, there's absolutely no limit on the Russian military. So Ukraine is being pushed back. As I said, additional territories would be handed to Russia under this plan. And what's significant about that, aside from the fact that whole cities full of Ukrainians are being turned over to the Russians, what's significant about that is that the Ukrainians both sides over the last 2 to 3 years have built up a series of fortifications. And so now, for Ukraine to pull back, hand those fortifications over to Russia, puts Russia in a doubly strong position if and when, and I think we all know when, Russia decides to kick off the offense once again. No NATO troops are allowed to be stationed in Ukrainian territory, which puts an end to European plans, which were until now supported by the United States to station a reassurance force there. And essentially, so Putin now, he gets additional territory. It's a win for him. And he gets lifting of sanctions, which would be hugely popular. He gets to rebuild his army. And he gets to continue to threaten not just Ukraine, but the whole flank of NATO, all the way from from the Arctic to the Black Sea. And, if you've been following Putin, that's he is he has to keep gnawing away at what he perceives to be the enemies, and trying to regain parts of the Soviet empire, if not all of it. And that's what he's going to continue to do. Aside from anything else, we got to look at the strategic messaging of this plan to places like Taiwan and South Korea. Again, I'm just hoping this isn't going to be painted as a U.S. plan. I agree with Mick. It looks like it was drawn out by a bunch of Russians after a heavy vodka drinking session, and slipped into the hands maybe of a comatose diplomat who is now trumpeting this as a U.S. plan.
Yeah, that guy's probably Steve Witkoff. Let's not get it twisted.
I didn't mention any name.
I'll say it. I mean, and we saw what happened. We heard what happened about a week ago. General Kellogg is out in January. So there's some rumors that he was fired, or some rumors that he's resigning. Understandably so, right? Because he's supposed to be the special envoy to Ukraine, and he's been sidelined ever since probably that Oval Office blow up with Zelensky and Trump. I was reading through this plan, and it's almost fucking mind-boggling that this could, you could trying to dictate to Ukraine. You're going to hold elections within 100 days. You're going to change your constitution. You're going to, and like you guys mentioned, cap your military. It's where the fuck do you get off telling us what to do with our country? And that's the U.S. and Russia. I'm saying that too. Russia, definitely. It's just incredible. And there's another point here in terms of the frozen assets, the Russian assets, that $100 billion would be given to Ukraine for the reconstruction. All $300 billion should be given to Ukraine, if not for the reconstruction, for weapons to fucking keep smoking Russian soldiers. And the interesting beats that I was looking at is the U.S. will receive 50% of profits of these projects. It's not everything is a fucking hotel deal. You know what I'm saying? These are real people's lives. Let's get a ceasefire done that makes sense for everybody. Not so much they could fuck off, the Russians, in my opinion, but for Ukraine, and then work on a long-lasting peace plan instead of just these fucking grubby ass hands trying to get in and loot Ukraine for what it's worth. Mick, over to you.
It tells NATO what to do too.
That too.
If I read it correctly, it says NATO can't expand.
Yeah.
Right.
What?
So now we're selling out Ukraine, NATO, all for. But let's be real. This isn't going to last. As soon as they get to the negotiation table, Ukraine and the European partners, if they're invited, are going to say no, just no.
Well, that messaging's kind of been clear ever since this plan came out, right? Zelensky had a big 10-minute address to the nation, and he put it pretty bluntly, talking about how we're in a tough spot. We're either give up our dignity or lose one of our biggest allies in the U.S.
Yeah, and it's a big deal. I mean, a lot of the weapon system they have rely on U.S. intelligence, and if we cut off intelligence, well, there you go. I think we've cut a lot of our security assistance down recently. Losing it entirely is. I hope there's some Europeans step up, right? I hope there's some Churchills out there and a lot less Chamberlains, because this is going to require, and the battles that are going on right now, Pokrovsk, am I saying that right, Andy? The hub of Ukrainian logistics it's by all analysts I'm talking to, the Ukrainians are outnumbered almost 10-1. If the tenuous hold on that city, it would be one of the biggest to fall, and it would really impact Ukrainians' ability to resupply themselves, right? So they're fighting against an overwhelming enemy for multiple years, and they have lukewarm support, not only by their allies, but their allies that are literally right next to them. So this is it always has been, but this is the situation where your neighbor's house is on fire. Are you going to wait till your house is on fire to start putting it out? Or are you going to go help your neighbor here? Right? So it really does take a leader to step up, hopefully multiple, and put their actions where their mouth is. Harshly worded tweets or all huddling around a table to listen to a speakerphone conversations is not going to do it. It's going to take people being very definitive and stop caring about what Russian says. They're going to threaten nuclear war every time. We all know it. Ignore it. Move on. Or else you're basically going to go down as cowards, in my opinion. And I don't think anybody wants to be going down as a coward in history. But the history's been written right now. And hopefully people are going to take heed of that. And I'm not just talking about the U.S. I'm talking about all of the democracies that claim to be in alliance.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mick. The only way ahead is for Europe to step up to the plate. I mean, we have been in the last year and a half, 2 years, an increasingly unreliable partner to Ukraine. And even before that, as I've said, and we drip fed Ukraine weapons, allowing the Russians to adapt. We've given them too little, too late. I know there's a lot of the audience here who are going to disagree with that, but we're either in or we're out. And what we've done is kind of tiptoe around in the shallow water, being afraid of Putin and giving things here and there. We should have poured on the lethal aid right from the start, and then we would be facing a very different situation. Now, I think all of us understand that, who understand Putin, but we are where we are now. And I would say, the best thing for Zelensky to do is not to fight this plan openly, but to try and negotiate and bring up other terms and counter terms, play Putin's game, and watch Putin reject things. And eventually, I think this administration will lose patience again. And meanwhile, appeal to the Europeans. I mean, Europe's having some severe fiscal problems right now, but they need to step up to the plate, as I've said. And I think, there are European leaders willing to do that. Poland is, the Baltic countries, the UK, even under a Labour government, has been more of a staunch supporter of Ukraine than our own government. So I think that, to your point of finding a Churchill, I'm not sure there is a Churchill out there unless you're looking at a very Gallic one. Macron, I know that's going to send shivers down people's spines. But you may not find individual leaders. But in the Baltics, actually, and in Poland, you're going to find a very determined front to whatever the cost to continue to support Ukraine to fight Russia. And Europe's made great strides in the last 2 years in manufacturing ammunition, particularly 155 rounds, which there's been a shortfall of, and Europe's going all in to include Germany on providing air defense systems, the long-range cruise and ballistic missiles. So I think that's what we're going to see. It's just, of course, hugely disappointing that our own country is no longer a staunch defender of freedom, or so it appears.
Yeah, and I've said this before, and I think one of you gents mentioned it too. What does this look like to our allies on the other side of the world, to Taiwan, and most importantly to China? If we can't even write our own, if this is true, if we can't even write our own peace plan or peace proposal, or we're, or the ones we are writing are heavily one-sided to the aggressor. What is Taiwan's probably thinking? What the hell are you going to do for us? And China's probably thinking this is perfect. This is a perfect playbook. So the ramifications on the other side of the globe, to me, are just as important as what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah, and even if you don't buy the U.S. should be leader of the free world, obviously I think we all do, but even if you don't buy that, then you go to the argument of, you do realize that every dime we spent given to Ukraine that depletes Russian military capability increases our relative strength to our most dangerous adversary, right? So even if you take out the morals, the ethics, the fact that we're a democracy and we've always viewed ourselves as leader of the free world, every dime enhances our own national security. And then even if you don't buy that, there's $335 billion worth of frozen Russian assets that they could use to support Ukraine. It wouldn't even be our own money.
Yeah.
Right? So this is one of those times you have to decide what side you're on. It's pretty clear. And you don't get, you don't get peace by capitulation. You're just going to get more conflict.
And I don't know if you... Go ahead, Andy.
No, I was just saying, to make to your point about Pokrovsk. Actually, one of our listeners is a resident of Pokrovsk, or that's his hometown, because whenever I refer to it as a shithole, he gets quite upset. But sadly, Pokrovsk, I mean, it was a shithole before. I've spent quite a bit of time there, but it's been absolutely flattened. And the environment there on the front line, we've talked about this for a while. I mean, we've talked about this before. It's just incomprehensible. I mean, anything that moves or emits a heat signature is killed. You know, the Russians, there's talks of the Russians, or stories of the Russians attacking now on, carrying thermal blankets, stripping down to almost nothing in, small groups like 2s and 3s, using sometimes quad bikes or motorcycles. No one uses APCs or infantry fighting vehicles anymore. RUSI estimates, that's the Royal United Service Institute's reputable, I was going to say Russian, reputable British think tank, estimates that in any given attack involving armored vehicles, 2 out of 3 are destroyed. I mean, the attrition is just incredible. Manned vehicles are becoming obsolete, and that's why the Ukrainians have developed unmanned vehicles that shoot, move, and communicate using AI. It's quite incredible. And there is a story in The Economist about the evacuation of medical personnel, of casualties, and they're using unmanned ground vehicles to do that. They recovered one guy from no man's land. I don't know if this is an exaggeration, but it says in the story
I saw that
he was
video.
there for 30 days. Yeah, and he just climbs in the vehicle. It's like an egg, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It closes around him, and then the Russians are trying to hit it with drones. It hits a mine and just keeps rolling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, we do tactical training out here in Montana, and we're adjusting based on all the incoming lessons learned from Ukraine. Right? There's going to be a lot more interest, as Andy just said, in individual low-cost vehicles for transport. Motorcycles, electric ones, automobiles, electric ones, or at least their version. We're adjusting to all that because you can see how things are shaping out there. And of course, drone warfare is they just took a helicopter down, I think an Mi-8, with a drone, 200 miles beyond enemy lines, if I read it correctly. So all these lessons, that's the other thing the U.S. can get from this. We should be sucking all this, not only fully supporting Ukraine with support, not fighting, but we could be getting all of these lessons learned because we're looking at the face of modern warfare right now in Ukraine, and it's ugly, but you don't want to lose it. So we need to be gathering all this information and getting ready for it. Unfortunately,
the proliferation of FPV, that's first-person view drones, is particularly frightening. When you read about these things, these things are like multiple snipers who don't just have direct line of sight fire, but can follow their victims into buildings. Once one of these drones is locked onto you, and I forget what the percentage is, but you've got a slim chance of surviving. And these drones are just hovering over, both sides of these drones just hovering over the other's territory, looking for targets. I mean, it's a terrifying. It's like a dystopian movie about the future.
Yeah, it is. we better be gathering all the info too.
And by the way, just, not everything's going Russia's way. I mean, Russia continues to take casualties, and Rusi is saying at least 1,000 a day. On a good day, it's 1,000 casualties a day. And
a day. Can you imagine that?
I mean, it's just incredible. And Russia now has turned on its own bloggers. There's this whole blogosphere of military kind of YouTuber, Telegrammers on the Russian side who are commenting on the war. Of course, they're pro-Russian. They always have been pro-Russian because they're Russians, right? But now a bunch of them have turned against the conduct of the war. I mean, they've always been quite critical, but now they come out in force to criticize particular generals and the government itself on how the war has been conducted. And they, in turn, have been labeled as terrorists, hunted down, and in some cases imprisoned. Again, when this narrative about Russia, everything's going Russia's way and Ukraine has no hope, it's not true. Russia has been advancing, but Russia's been threatening on the verge of taking Pokrovsk for almost 2 years now, which just shows how the advance is taking place. And for every yard they take, they're suffering just an incredible number of casualties. 1,000 a day, on a good day too, and Russia was saying during assaults that can be 1,500 or more.
And just imagine if we released the funds, we released any restrictions on advanced weapon systems, and we put the Sanctioning Russia Act into place, how that would shift the situation right now.
And not for nothing, but Russia's already has no qualms about fomenting, sabotage in other countries. In the UK, in Poland, what was it last week? There was that rail explosion, and I guess they're charging 2 Ukrainians who are allegedly working on behalf of Russia. But if that doesn't give European leaders the push that they need to get all in on this, then I don't know what it is. Because Russia, if they get what they want, based on this 28-point plan, that's not going to stop them there, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and sadly, although we talked about Russian casualties, they're not having an effect, right? I mean, no one in the regime that really cares about casualties, and there isn't, and there's such a firm clampdown on the population as far as the media, as far as speaking against the war or even about the war, that it's not as though, it's not like it was in Afghanistan where groups of mothers got together and protested the war, and that led in the end to Gorbachev pulling people out. This is a totally different situation, different regime. And by the way, Russia has not gone to a second round of conscription. I mean, the last round of conscription was over 2 years ago, and that's because they're getting enough volunteers and they're offering huge amounts of money. The real story about how the war is being fought isn't filtering back to the Russian public. I mean, last year, 2024, the Russians recruited like 430,000 troops, right? So they're recruiting more. Even if they're losing 1,000 a day, they're still recruiting more than they're losing. And in 2025, I think it's almost at that level. It's like 403,000. An enormous number of volunteers now. And plus, of course, they're emptying the jails. The amount of money that these guys are being offered is a huge amount. It's life-changing money, but of course, it's sadly for most of them, many of them, actually probably most of them, it's a life-changing experience, and not in a good way.
Yeah, and you just talked about emptying the jails, and it sparked something I had read, so I just looked it up. It says that Russia, according to Ukrainian intelligence and human rights groups reports, Russia is systematically recruiting and sending men with significant mental and physical disabilities to the front lines. Like they're being declared unfit for duty, and immediately they're being told, too bad, sign this, and they're sending them off to the front line. All kinds of mental and physical disabilities. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's a weird mix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very, very high-tech war, and yet the need for infantry is insatiable. The demand for infantry on both sides, and the Ukrainians are having problems, severe problems. That's partly why the line is so porous, that their units are routinely now staffed at 40% or below. And those are frontline units. It's they're just finding it really hard to find the manpower to fill combat units, and then they've got a huge desertion rate. And frankly, who can blame these guys? Because they are so low on numbers, it means that for the guys they do have, they're spending an unending time in the trenches. It's not, even if when you read about the First World War, units were rotated, right? Or, I mean, I'm not saying it was a picnic, but at least units were rotated back from the front after a period of time. And so you'd have a regiment manning a line and battalions would rotate. So you always had a battalion in the rest period, and the Ukrainians just can't do that.
Is there any talk in
And
Ukraine about
you're in bad shape
mobilization?
when you're talking fondly about the First World War. It's a good example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there
Like
any
you said,
talk
it's
about
just
mobilization in Ukraine?
There is mobilization, conscription. For some reason, and I think this is a cultural piece, age limit, the bottom of the lower threshold has always been quite high. It was in the early 30s, and it went down to 27, I believe, and someone can correct me, I'm sure, if I'm wrong. I believe it's 25. So you still got a segment of the population, large segment of young men who are not eligible for call up. But in the first year, and I mean I know this from personal experience, first year of the war, that there was a tremendous surge of volunteers to go to the front. But sadly, that was 3 years ago, and most of those guys statistically would have been killed or wounded. Ukraine's lost, the best of its youth. Some 600,000 estimated men eligible to fight, and I don't know if that includes the 18 to 25-year-olds have left the country illegally. If you are between the age of 60 and 18, you're not allowed, and male, you cannot leave Ukraine. But an estimated 600,000 have left.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously keep an eye on what's going on here. I just want to mention like the chief of staff of the army. What are you doing, bro? He was I guess he was quoted or something about like, like hard line talking about like how Ukraine has till Thursday and that's it. Which is like why are you even talking? Isn't there a chief of staff? Isn't there a joint chief of staff? Isn't there a defense secretary? Like why are you popping off in the media? Unless it
Who's that?
was
Randy George?
no, geez, what's his name, man? Hold on.
you talking about the civilian, the Secretary of the Army,
The army
Driscoll,
chief of I think it was the army chief of staff.
like the
He's a
like the
uniform.
general.
Randy George, current chief of
It
staff.
might be him. Yeah. Yeah, I think he went off. He popped off on the record.
I don't know why I'd say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
That's
saw
really
that
out
and
of
I was just
place.
like, what? I think he's might be actually in Geneva with Rubio right now as well. Um anyway, we'll keep an eye on what's going on with the 28-point peace plan. I don't think it's going to be signed, and we're going to by Christmas we'll have a fucking parade. More to come obviously with that. I want to touch on what's going on with Venezuela. A bunch of what are they called? NOTAMs, like you can't.
Noticed airman.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That airspace is closed and stuff like that in and around the Caribbean and Venezuela. Reports about doing leaflet drops. We have seen a bit of sabotage going on. Some oil refinery and oils stations going up in flames. Who could that be? Obviously, the CIA working with Venezuelan people. What are we looking at with that? Mick, you had mentioned a little bit about that on our group chat.
Yeah, obviously I don't know and be talking, but it's clear that at least plenty of people in the media think that this has started, right? So the covert phase, which would come first to kind of shape the battle space, so to speak, with sabotage operations likely fomenting a potential uprising against Maduro, replacing him, trying to get to his inner circle to do that, push him out, maybe give him an off ramp, flight to Cuba. This is speculation on my part. If it works, it could, it certainly would be good for the people of Venezuela, and it would avoid the need for military action. If it doesn't work, we certainly have the firepower in place for air and missile strikes, whether it's just focused on drug infrastructure, narcotics infrastructure, or also on the capabilities. We'll find out. But the dates that people are talking about is 24 November, because that's when the foreign terrorist organization designation goes into place. The covert efforts, which won't stop, of course, even if we go over, we'll have time to at least begin. And we could see a pretty busy week next week. Of course, the questions are going to be is how limited are these military actions, if there are military actions, and what is Congress going to do? Are they going to do nothing? Are they going to require that they're approved, under the War Powers Act? There's a lot of questions, but certainly we could see a lot of action coming up right in time for Thanksgiving.
Milburn?
Yeah, I mean, I, I, I assume that this is all calculated to get Maduro to step down, to enhance the opposition within Venezuela and to enhance their position and persuade Maduro to step down. And of course, I do hope that we're not really planning to go to war against Venezuela. But I mean, it would seem, let's hope I don't have to appear to apologize for saying this, but it would seem to be far-fetched, wouldn't it? I mean, especially in light of what we've been hearing from the administration on the side almost of being isolationist and avoiding foreign wars going ahead. Although maybe fighting against Venezuela doesn't count as a foreign war in their books, I don't know.
Yeah, much about bombing like Iran, and everybody else, like those seem like foreign, not wars, but at least escapades.
Well,
if you run on stopping war, I don't think like B-2 bombing Iran and then threatening to bomb the shit out of Venezuela really is a campaign promise achieved.
I mean, playing devil's advocate, those two, I think those two activities are on different planes. No pun intended, because
sure,
the strike against Iran's nuclear facilities could be regarded as the culmination of, a decade and a half of planning and negotiation and planning and again, I'm playing devil's advocate here, and the strike was calculated to preempt a situation that would have led to increased conflict or war in the Middle East or reduced stability in the Middle East. I mean, that is an argument for the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities, but I cannot think of a comparative argument to use as far as going to war with Venezuela.
Sure. Yeah. So it was like the first nuclear deal with Iran, right? In terms of like us wanting them not to enrich uranium.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know.
Well, at that time, to Andy's point.
Go ahead.
To Andy's point, Israel had already destroyed their air and missile defense, their air force. If there was ever going to be a good time to do that, which the biggest risk, of course, would be to the aircraft, that was it. I mean, as you guys might remember, I supported that. I'm not probably at any risk of winning the Nobel Peace Prize either, but that I think was supported by the situation. To Andy's point, I mean, I would love to stop narcotics coming to the United States. And I do think Maduro has destroyed Venezuela, which caused a lot of instability in the Western Hemisphere. I hope that we can do this. If we're going to do it, I hope we can do it without the need to put any servicemen and women in harm's way. So I hope the covert program that the president's already, announced is successful. We'll see.
Announced openly.
Yeah. If not, I don't know how many targets. I mean, maybe we have some in our audience that have a better idea. I mean, how long could an air campaign against Venezuela really last?
Yeah.
I mean, is it going to look like, we're just going to be hitting dirt strips, or are we actually going to go after infrastructure targets to make the situation even worse in Venezuela? Right, so even more people leave. I don't know. I mean, what would be the main effort of the air and missile strikes?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as though I can't imagine Venezuela has a very sophisticated IADS. But again, I'm not sure what we would be going after. It's interesting, we talked about the legality of striking these drug boats too, and I think there's at least murmurings in the Senate about the same thing. That, I mean, all of us, I don't know, I don't mean to speak for you guys, but I don't think any of us would ethically have problems with killing members of cartel, but that's not necessarily the people who are dying, number one, which is a concern, right, if we're killing innocent people. And number
also,
two,
I think a handful of those boats weren't from Venezuela either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even if they were, it's, as we talk about, Venezuela's not even the lead conduit of the drugs.
They're the minor fucking leads of drug trafficking. Let's call
I'm
it
surprised
spade
they
a
haven't
spade.
started automating their whole maritime distribution system.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of crazy
right,
they're
yeah.
actually putting people on it. Unless they just really don't care about the individuals on it. They're just expendable by the cartel's view. But if you did this with automated boats, which is coming, we all know it's coming, right?
Mhm.
Well, they could submerge themselves and hide and then come back up and then land somewhere surreptitiously in the United States. Yeah, it's...
I bet it's already, I'm sure it's already happening.
I got to jump, guys.
All right, Mick.
Sorry.
All right, Mick.
No worries.
Get
See you later.
We might be maybe talking to you later this week if this kicks off.
Yeah.
Be a heck of a Thanksgiving special.
Yeah.
All right, guys, do me a favor. Check out Mick's podcast. The link is in the description. He's got a new one about Stoicism. All right, let's wrap this up with each other. We don't need... Yeah, I don't buy it. I don't buy that Venezuela is this big, dangerous narcotics state. It is, but it's not like ruining the infrastructure of the American people. If we really are serious about going after drugs, we're going to have to go after Mexican cartels. We're going to have to go Colombian cartels. And we're going to have to pee-pee whack at the minimum China, who makes the fucking fentanyl. Like, who are we kidding here? So somebody explain to me the fucking point about fucking taking out fucking Maduro.
Yeah, but I'm going to shift topics here before we sign off, and because you made me think about something, as you normally do, and we talked a little bit about Taiwan earlier, and we've all expressed concern about kind of the drop in the US's stance about projecting strategic ambiguity, right, about whether or not we would defend Taiwan, because us three, and I know Mick feels this way too because he has said as much, we may doubt very seriously that the United States will go to war over Taiwan, that America's sons and daughters will be put in harm's way. I think probably that would be politically unacceptable to the American public. But it has always been the stance of administrations on either side of the aisle not to tell China that, right? to say, hey, fuck around and find out, to use that overused expression. And certainly to posture ourselves and look at what the Marine Corps is doing with Force Design 2030, as though we do seriously intend to go to war with China. I mean, China is regarded as being our pacing threat for acquisitions, for training and everything. And even if it is just a colossal demonstration, there is a point to it, right? But we undermine that point if we turn our backs openly on Taiwan, that is a concern. So, having said that, though, I read an interesting article the other day that from I love the term China watcher, but the China watcher, right, in one of the think tanks in DC, and I'll remember his name in a moment, it doesn't matter. But, his point is this, look, the State Department reached out to the KMT opposition member in Taiwan, the Kuomintang Party, and the KMT, they're not exactly pro-China, but they're less opposed to China, right? They're more open to conciliation, although obviously not giving up Taiwanese independence. So I'm talking about in Taiwan. The State Department, curiously enough, reached out to the opposition leader and invited him to visit the United States. That is bizarre, all right? Instead of Taiwan's president, and I forget the name of the party, but who represents a party that is very openly, I won't say belligerent, but anti-China and is very strident in voicing its intention to defend Taiwan to the last man, the last bullet, right? So U.S. has done this to send a message, perhaps. Now, who to send a message to? Taiwanese opposition who are more conciliatory to China, maybe to China. And at the same time, Xi has been mass firing members of his military, the Army and the Navy primarily. And these are the old guard who spent their whole lives preparing to invade China. So anyway, this China watcher postulates, I like that term, that what is happening is that there has been talks between Xi and Trump, and the talks have gone along the lines of, hey, look, let's, blah, 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 tariffs, but let's also talk Taiwan. Maybe there is some compromise here that doesn't involve a hard-out invasion of Taiwan, but also involves more of a partnership between Taiwan and China, involving the Kuomintang Party going ahead. And then, both sides can declare victory, and it's going to be better for both sides. And then Xi, having committed to that, or having decided that that's the best course of action, now is faced by the old guard of his military who are like, hey, boss, what the fuck are you talking about? No, that's all we've been, that's our whole reason for being, is to invade Taiwan. And so now he's getting hard with them and firing them en masse. I mean, it's an interesting hypothesis. I don't think he has any evidence, but it's certainly, informed speculation. And it answers the why question, right? Why would we invite the opposition leader, the Kuomintang Party, here?
Yeah.
Why would she be firing?
Especially because, like, back in the day, that would be like a big, massive news story, right? Like, if that was going on.
Exactly. I mean,
things are a little different now, but like
Taiwan. And the other thing is, so Xi is firing these military leaders, and normally it's for corruption, but these are not corruption trials. They're just mass firings, and without any kind of indication of what they could be about. So it does certainly answer that question. Anyway, it's interesting.
So there's speculation that Xi is like softening.
There's some kind of like under the table negotiation in place.
To like Hong Kongify Taiwan.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that could be a course of action, because it would have to be a course of action whereby Xi could say to the Chinese people, hey, look, I basically de facto delivered Taiwan, right?
They're back in the fold, right?
We didn't have to lose a ton of people doing that. So, I'm not saying it's a solution that the majority of Taiwanese would be ecstatic with. Who knows? Clearly not right now, because the party that is more conciliatory to China is in the minority, is on the out. Anyway,
that is
would I bring that up?
No, that's super interesting.
And before we sign off, though, Dee, I would like to talk about, and let's see if any of our listeners are interested. Do we have any positive Do we ever get positive comments? I think we do, don't we?
Always.
Yeah.
Mostly
We've
positive.
got a hard cadre uh, of critics, but they keep
Yeah,
returning
but I think
episode
it's
after
like
episode.
I
Yeah.
think the ratio is it's not
Yeah.
as many.
Anyway, for the serious fans of this show, and there are at least three of those, I think we should ask if they would be interested in like a deep dive on the drone war in Ukraine. I can bring in a guy who's been in Kiev, an American involved in that since the outset of the war. But there's some really fascinating lessons coming out of that we haven't had a chance to talk about on the show.
Yeah, I mean, since this is a dictatorship, the answer is yes. Like, we don't need to put it to a vote to our listeners.
Yeah.
I
Okay. Yeah.
say
Oh,
yes.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I am
And,
Xi Jinping in this show.
and the other thing is we want to we want to book a hearing on the team house, which is where all the drinking takes place,
Yeah,
to talk about this Gaza paper that Mick and I have been writing. It was 75 pages long, and then we found out that the limit was 25 pages. So that's why I
that's
asked
so.
you about self-publishing a book. It's like, what are we going to do with this now?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it'd be great to publish that and let people read that. I'm sure there'll be insights in there that people really didn't think of or know. I know you've been tracking it
Yeah,
since
we
it's
won't make
gone
it
up.
boring. I mean, we can chat, and I mean, we won't be as lively as some of your guests. I mean, at least a third of them are in prison right now, right? Another one just went to the big house over the week.
Yeah, former
It's going,
CIA
yeah, going, and
officer Dale
you've had
Blendler.
all types on that show: spies, traitors, pedophiles. So, I mean, we're pretty run of the mill by
Unbelievable.
comparison.
Yeah. Well,
No, yeah, once it's ready to go, we can definitely have you guys on. Like, let's do a team house.
yeah.
Jay, what are you saying?
I'm doing
Sorry.
some digging. I know I talked about it before. To bring somebody on and talk about Sudan, Mozambique now. Because while yes, the things going on in Ukraine and Gaza are absolutely critical, there's things going on in Africa that need to be talked about too. So I'm doing some digging to try to bring some folks on to talk about it.
Yes,
Yeah.
All sounds good to me.
Sudan is just, I mean, it's not incredible that Sudan hasn't become more of a story in the media, but the impact of Sudan, the global impact of Sudan is, already far greater than that of Gaza, and yet receives very little publicity,
Yeah.
hidden away as it is on the continent of Africa.
Yeah.
Also, I'd love to talk more about like the proxy war that's going on between Saudi and
Yeah.
Qatar,
Yeah.
because it seems like that's pretty hot and heavy in Sudan.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. So those are things to look forward to, guys, on the Eyes On podcast. So do us a favor, like and subscribe. Tell a friend. That's the best thing. Share it on your social media. Andy Milburn is a prolific author, and his book, his autobiography, is called When the Tempest Gathers. It's incredible. I want you to check it out. That link is in the description. Jason Lyons, his links are in the description. He's still working on the book. We'll keep you posted. Once he knows what's up, we'll let you guys know. And the best place to support the show is patreon.com/theteamhouse. You get both Eyes on Geopolitics and the Team House ad-free early. And if you have any questions, you can shoot us questions. And yeah, as always, this is great, guys.
Awesome. Good to see everybody. Take care, Len.
All the best, Phyllis.
Thanks, Jen.